Young Dazzler has finally been added to the Awakening list, and this is a huge day for the mutant population of Marvel Future Fight. So we gotta awaken her, and then I gotta take her through as a support to show you guys just how bonkers she is. Because you thought you thought mutants were strong before. Just wait until you see how insane this becomes when I need to get some more feathers. And there we go. We got the awakening all done. But yeah, like I was saying, you cannot fathom how insane it's going to be for some of these mutants, because a lot of people forget Dazzler has basically one of the best mutant specific supports. Now, these days, there are better supports overall if you have them completely built out. So like if you have, for example, Sin's seasonal uniform plus a high ranking artifact for villain mutants, right? If you have Coulson's artifact and you have his seasonal uniform, sure. But if you're missing some of those pieces, this is insane. Look at this. Mutant allies get 70% ignore dodge, which is very, very high. And then 65% increased damage to boss types. This is an insane support buff for world boss and GBR content and any future content that bars tier 2s from entering. So yeah, she's already been used a lot, and she still is used to this day as a support in ABX, ABL. So that is something that speaks volumes to her value as basically the second best support for Magneto. But that, also considering the fact that you can get her artifact for even more buffs, right? Look at this, an extra 10% damage to villains, and then it takes the additional instinct based on the character, not Dazzler, and then another 20% attack buff. So really powerful support. And she's got a CTP of Insight here for even more support. Let's take her in and see how far we can push mutants now that we have Dazzler. Perfect example of Dazzler's value here on a stage like this, in this case, stage 65 to 69 of Gore, where they're asking you for any mutant heroes. So in this case, before Dazzler, you would go with something like this. You'd go with, let's say you're using Wolverine as your main DPS. You're going to go with Beast Lead and Polaris, or maybe whatever Polaris, only 5% less. Maybe if you have the artifact for a Hope, maybe you would do Hope and Polaris. But you don't have to do that anymore. Now you can do Dazzler. But just for the comparison's sake, I'm going to show you guys how fast we can get through Gore using what would have been the best team up until a couple of days ago versus subbing in Dazzler. This is certainly going to go by pretty fast because my Wolverine is pretty stacked, but he is using a CTP of Greed again after being on the energy train, so it's probably not going to be as fast as we would have maybe hoped. Let's see here. Still pretty strong. Not bad at all. Okay, we're down to 20 bars. Not quite, not quite brilliant destruction levels that we were showcasing before, but still pretty nice, right? All right, we're just going to do... We'll do this as well, rather than just taking it at the first cut, and we'll see how long it takes to kill Gore's first life, right? Not the full fight here, but the first life. But the longer you compare these kinds of fights, the better that Dazzler's support is going to appear. Okay, we're running into some issues with Pierce. You know what? We're actually just going to go because we're actually going to get stuck with the Pierce situation. Okay, we get down to 4 bars in about a minute, and he interrupts us with the sword phase. That's before Dazzler. Now let's see what happens after Dazzler. So a minute is the time to beat here with my Brilliant Greed Wolverine. Let's go ahead and see how this first rotation looks. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Yeah, you're already seeing some pretty filthy stuff here. Okay, yeah, man, Dazzler's just crazy. Yeah, we get down to 12 bars. So you do get to this phase pretty much at the same time due to the fact that Wolverine's tier 3 does a lot of damage. So again, it's not really showcasing the true full value of Dazzler because of the fact that, Gore takes so much damage anyways. But we go to a higher stage and it'll become even more apparent here. But we should finish him off. Yeah, so look at this. Rather than getting stuck at 4 minutes, after a minute, we do it in less than 45 seconds. So that's a 20-second increase in time, and we did more damage in that same amount of time. Another example of Dazzler's value here is on stage 40 to 44 of Kang, where it just asks for mutants. Now, normally this stage is a little bit difficult for Rogue to complete with Polaris support, and you're thinking maybe use Mystique instead of Storm, right? And I would do that, but then I want to do another clear with Magneto, and he needs a support. So we put Mystique over here with Professor X, just adding a bit of a team-up bonus, and then we can use Storm for the elemental damage. But that is a seasonal uniform, and the elemental damage I don't think is going to be as strong as Dazzler's. So let's test that out. Again, here we don't have to do the full fight. We just want to see how long, for example, it's going to take us to get Kang to do the time travel phase, which is honestly one of the coolest things in the world boss fights in general. And, you know, as much as I love Rogue with a Rage, which is best for ABX and ABL, mostly ABL, she doesn't do quite as well as I would have liked her to do here. She can still do this stage, but it can be a little tight sometimes. Sometimes even I get worried that she might not make it. So I am really looking forward to using Dazzler here if possible. I could even maybe move Dazzler to the Magneto team, and then I can do double support for Rogue. But I'm also curious because, of course, Dazzler's support is better than, say, you know, someone like Mystique, right? Which is just 40% increased damage versus 65 damage to boss types, right? That's obviously 65 is a much bigger number than 40. But for elemental damage characters, oftentimes, right, the elemental damage is so important, right? The elemental buffs are so valuable. So we get there in 1 minute and 2 seconds. That's actually pretty fast. I actually got kind of lucky there. Now let's see what Dazzler can do instead of Storm. Now I know Dazzler's a premium character, and Storm in the comparison here is a premium uniform for a free-to-play character, so it's a bit tough either way. But what I like about this is that rather than just comparing, you know, oh guys, I had 1 support, now I have 2. Wow, look how crazy Polaris is. Of course Polaris is going to be crazy when you're buffing a character who only had 1 buff before, and now you're just doubling the buffs, right? But this is more interesting because it's sort of like pitting buffs against each other. And it creates more of an established hierarchy in the world of supports where you're like, then you can know for sure, and this is something I actually want to make a separate video about, is what is the best, the absolute best support here for a given character on a given stage, given restrictions, right? And it could turn out, like I haven't tested this ahead of time, so it could turn out that Storm is actually better for Rogue, which it's actually kind of looking like that might be the case. So yeah, stay tuned for that. It's either going to be that Storm is better or it's going to be very, very close. So we're going to have to wait and see here. But yeah, no, it looks like Rogue is going to be just a little bit behind. Wow, I'm actually surprised. So Storm is actually better than Dazzler for elemental damage characters that don't have a lot of elemental damage buffs already. Wow. So this is interesting. This is very interesting. It's about she's about 1 to 2 rotations behind. That's a really cool pause screen, by the way. So what this means for Dazzler is it's a little bit complicated because a lot of people forget, but Storm's seasonal uniform provides all allies with, I think, 50% or 55% increased elemental damage. Where is it here? Here we go. All allies get 30% ignore dodge and 55 increased damage to all elemental. That's actually better for characters like Jean, characters like Rogue, who don't have a lot of elemental damage buffs, but deal exclusively elemental damage. However, Storm will actually be worse for Rogue than Dazzler if my Rogue had a Judgment instead, right? Because if my Rogue, instead of having a Rage, if she had a Judgment, then Polaris would be insanely good and a much better pick over Storm, because as you get above 200%, above 300%, the elemental damage buffs sort of, there's diminishing returns, right? It doesn't scale infinitely. It sort of plateaus once you get to a certain high percentage. Another example here on stage 45 to 49 of Infinity Ultron, they ask you for hero mutants. Now, let's say you didn't have seasonals for Rogue, but you had Storms, but you didn't even have her level tier 4. You only had her level 80. Before Dazzler, this would probably be your best bet. You'd bring along Colossus for that damage reduction maybe, or maybe you bring along Beast for a bit more buffs offensively, but otherwise there are no solid supports besides, you know, Hope if you have her, who's super expensive, plus her artifact. But now we have Dazzler. So I'm actually really curious how hard Storm is going to hit with this extra buff, because this is 70% ignore dodge, which is crazy, right? You could probably push tier 3 level 70s to just crush this content. They did make it a little bit easier, unfortunately, but I'm actually really curious with this is a Rage build. Yeah, how much faster this is than it was before. Let's unload here. Yeah, this is crazy. Wow. This is nuts, dude. We get him. Wow. So in less than 22 seconds, we get him to go to his invincible stage. Wow. 22 seconds. Crazy. Just for reference, without Dazzler, the best option is going to look like this, where you still get a good damage because, you know, they nerfed Ultron, sadly, a while back, but not quite the same punch as you can see, right? Not zeroing him down so quickly. We're about close to 10 bars behind. Okay, a little bit closer here, but still not quite making it. So even on lower stages where the boss has less defense and less HP, you can still notice a big difference from adding Dazzler to the team. I'm super excited to continue plugging Dazzler into different teams and seeing how far I can push different lineups now that I have this insane support character. And I highly recommend, if you have Dazzler on your roster, that you do build her up and transcend her because of how insane her support values are, especially if you're missing some of the other more premium supports that have passed you by recently, as we previously mentioned, like Coulson, like Sin. So yeah, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of Dazzler. Smash the like button if you enjoy the content, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.